So, welcome everybody to this week's podcast episode for Financial Freedom for Physicians podcast. And I'm the host, Dr. Christopher Liu. And today we have a member of the Doctors Podcast Network, Dr. Brent Lacey, host of the Scope of Practice. And as usual, the four tenets of the podcast include financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, and emotional freedom. So tonight's guest, we'll touch on all four aspects, and we'll go into his journey and story. Before we begin, I'm going to bring up his bio. So Dr. Brent Lacey is a gastroenterologist who is passionate about helping physicians succeed with business and personal finances. As a physician, he understands how overwhelming it can be to step out of clinical training and into a career. And he has seen firsthand the lack of education on how to run a practice and manage finances. He has coached hundreds of families to succeed in eliminating debt and has spoken to physician groups around the country on topics related to business and personal finance. That's why he founded the Scope of Practice website, which is www.thescopeofpractice.com. His goal is to help physicians learn how to manage their businesses successfully and master their personal finances. So without much ado, we welcome Dr. Brent Lacey to the show. Welcome.
Hey, Chris, thanks for having me. I'm pumped about this, man. So you were on my show like what, 3 months ago, 4 months ago?
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It was awesome. It was a fantastic conversation. So I'm looking forward to hopefully returning the favor here for you.
Yeah, it was. I'm really excited because we're now in the network of the Doctors Podcast Network, and here we're doing collaborations, and it's just great to be with fellow podcasters and thought influencers so that we can help shape the culture and the future direction of medicine.
100%. I mean, I always say the best way to change the culture is to participate in it.
Exactly. So tell us about your background, your story. I'm always interested in how Superman came to be who he is, and tell us about how you started the Scope of Practice.
Yeah. So I am a full-time gastroenterologist, and I think that's probably one of the big things that distinguishes me from a lot of the physician bloggers and podcasters out there. I feel like the space is pretty well dominated by anesthesiology and ER and radiology and derm. And folks that have either stepped away from clinical medicine or kind of gone part-time. But I still run a full-time GI practice, and I love it. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine giving it up. So, but attendant with that, unfortunately, comes some major time demands. So it definitely changes things. But I did all of my postgraduate medical training in the military. So I was in the Navy for 11 years, active after med school, and did my internal medicine and GI training in San Diego at the Naval Medical Center. A couple tours with the Navy and with the Marines, and then about 6 months ago, decided to get out. Got a job offer that I couldn't pass up back in my hometown of Dallas, and joined the private practice out here. And so it's been quite the transition from military to civilian, but it's been awesome. It's been a wild ride the whole way.
Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like you I have family living in Dallas, and it's a very burgeoning area. And so you transitioned from military and now into civilian. And how is it? Tell us about the journey, like the differences, like the adjustments that you had to make, and all of that in terms of. I know you do a lot of coaching and speaking about personal finances and leadership, and tell us more.
Yeah, so I started the Scope of Practice about a year and a half ago. I had been doing personal finance coaching for about 5 or 6 years. If you guys are familiar with the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University class, I taught that at my church for several years, and then built a full-fledged financial discipleship ministry around that, teaching, doing one-on-one financial coaching and budget classes, and working with divorced folks and single moms and things like that. Just some really awesome ministry work. And then started getting asked to do the same thing at my hospital and coaching the residents and the students. And it was kind of funny actually how it happened. I think it was just one day I'd done my third or fourth lecture for the month, and I was getting the same questions all the time. And I thought to myself, it'd be so good if I had a blog or something online somewhere where people could just go and download an article about it that I could write, because I just get asked the same questions. It'd be cool if I had a blog or something. And then I thought to myself, hey, why don't I just have a blog or something? So then I just like, I wonder what's involved in that. So I just started doing some research and putting together, and before I knew it, I had 30 articles up on the website. And then I started, this is kind of fun. Okay, this is good. And then I was like, yeah, I don't get to talk to people. I wonder what it takes to start a podcast. And just kind of kept launching. It's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love I love the format of the podcasting, because it's on the go. You can whenever you want, and it's it's audio format, and plus it's like it's very the vibe of a podcast really appeals. So, and I like how you did it from a blog and then you transitioned to a podcast. So
Well, the long form conversations are really nice because you can really dig deep into a topic. It's a lot better, in my opinion, than a 3-minute YouTube video, which is about the max that you're going to get people to pay attention to on a YouTube video most of the time. I think the average I've seen is about 2 minutes. If you're lucky, you might get 5. But it's just harder but like a podcast, I mean, someone puts their earbuds in, hops on a treadmill, or just starts driving to work, and then you're in their ear for 45 minutes, and it's pretty normal. And you can really have these great in-depth discussions with people who really are serious thinkers about these kinds of topics. And it's just very, very fun.
yeah, it's awesome. And so with transition, I know you talk a lot of, well, we will have you as a featured guest on future shows, but I know you delve into different topics such as personal finances and leadership. And I know you've spoken at White Coat Investors and a lot of thought influencer conferences. So what have been some of the challenges, in terms of personal finances and some of the things that you learned, and developing side income streams, and then now you're going and helping people with these concepts?
Well, so I think the thing that was interesting for me was, at least initially, because I imagine you'll have lots and lots of coaches on your show in the months and years to come. But I think the thing that's interesting about coaching is that in order to be a successful coach, you've got to be good enough at the topics that you're talking about to be able to explain it to folks in ways that they don't understand. You don't you don't have to be the best person at a thing. You have to be really good at explaining it and getting other people to do it. So, the analogy I like to think of is, well, I was going to say the Duke basketball team, but they were pretty awful this year, so maybe it's not the best example this year. But in a normal year, you think about the Duke basketball team. If Coach K was actually to get out on the floor and play 3-on-3 with the guys, he gets smoked, right? He's terrible, but he's really good at pulling out the best in his players. And I think that's the thing that's interesting about being a coach, is you really have to be good at explaining things so that it helps other people bring out the best in themselves. And that's been an interesting journey to try to learn, because that's a very different thing than mastering a skill. You kind of have to master the skill of helping someone else master a skill.
I love this. It's very analogous to the see one, do one, teach one. So, and we've seen some of the best athletes don't necessarily make the best coaches, and so coaching is a skill in and of itself. So
yeah, and it's also, I think, really not true that the old adage you sometimes hear, those who can't do teach. And I think that's really wrong, because I think the best teachers are the ones who also can do, the ones who understand it, who have done it themselves, who have been through it. I really think those are the people who are the best teachers. I mean, I've heard you speak on a number of different platforms. I mean, my own show, for example, and you've lived this stuff, right? I mean, your personal journey taking you all the way through with med school and starting all your companies and all your real estate investing and everything. You actually lived through that. You had to learn it. You had to figure it all out. And so now you're in a really good position to show other people. It's like you fall in a hole, like someone falls in a hole and you throw yourself down there, and they're like, well, now what did you do that for? Now we're both down here. You said, yeah, but I've been down here before. I know the way out.
yeah, I love that analogy. So and I know, so now it's always like you're transitioning from, you have to learn it, and then once you learn it, then you can develop the skill of teaching it. And that's why I love podcasting. It's a wonderful platform because now we can take what our collective intelligence and, share it, and we can leverage that and grow. So
Well, and it's great that it's such a low barrier to entry now. So it doesn't cost very much. The equipment and the technology and the techniques are widely available now. I mean, 10 years ago was the Wild West. It was very, very difficult. And now, I mean, golly, my grandmother could start a podcast if she wanted to. She actually could. She's actually really tech savvy. Um, but it's that's the thing that's great about all these different side hustles. If people want to get into passive real estate investing, or people want to get into uh, various side gigs and side hustles, the opportunities are just boundless. They're just all out there. There's all kinds of people out there willing to give away information of how to do it for free. It's low barrier to entry in terms of time, in terms of cost, in terms of skill acquisition. It's a great time for this kind of stuff. The gig economy is booming.
yeah, yeah. The information age has really democratized access to information, and now we can build upon it. So um, what were some of the if someone really wanted to start a podcast, what would be some of the easiest ways to just, bare bones minimum, just get their content out there?
So there's very few things you actually need in order to start a podcast. So on the technical side, you need a microphone, and you can get a decent microphone for $100, $120, something like that. So don't drink your Starbucks for a month and then save up the $120 and go buy you a good microphone on Amazon. And mine's the one that I have is it's not super super high end, but it's fine. It's good quality. So get yourself a microphone. You need a laptop or a desktop computer with either a webcam or not if you're going to do video. And then you just need to start talking. And I think what's most important about starting a podcast is not actually even the technical piece of it, because the technical piece is easy. You record your voice into the microphone, you post it on a hosting platform like Buzzsprout or Libsyn or something like that, and then you upload it to Apple Podcasts, and that's actually a fairly simple process. What's more important than the technical stuff, though, is the content. And I think where that really starts is answering the question, what do you want to talk about? What's important? Because that's one of the things that's great about being a physician is that your opportunities are fairly expansive. So I know lots of physicians that do podcasts on medicine, and in particular their own specialty. And they're more patient facing or more patient centered. And then there's a lot of podcasters that are more physician centered, physician facing. They're trying to coach other physicians how to do certain things, or maybe they're not doing any of that. There's a gal I'm interviewing on my podcast coming up soon, that she was a physician and stepped away from clinical medicine, and now she's a full-time musician, like
Oh,
a full-time
nice.
professional musician doing compositions and the whole nine yards. It's really really impressive. So she could do a podcast on music theory, right?
Yeah.
It's great. So that's the thing I think you got to do first is what do you want to talk about, and what's something that you think there are people out there that really want to hear. So decide that, then decide, is it going to be a podcast where you just talk about stuff, or is it going to be a podcast like this where you're interviewing people? And then just start. Honestly, that's the thing that was I think the most helpful for me, is when I decided, okay, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to just I got to figure out if this is even a viable idea. So about a year ago, I started getting the idea, sort of this bug in my head. I was like, I think I want to do a podcast, but I don't know if I'm ready for it. I don't know if it's something that'll be fun. I said, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the month of April. This is April of last year. So I'm going to take the month of April. I'm just going to record like 15 or 20 podcast episodes, and we'll just see what happens. And if I put together 15 episodes and I edit them and I upload them and they're all terrible and I just don't like how they sounded, hey, you know what? It was 15 hours. I had 15 great conversations with really amazing people, and that's not a bad way to spend a month. And I'm not really out too much. And if it ends up being something that I really enjoy and I really like, great. I got 15 episodes in the bank, and let's do this thing. And so, man, it's just a matter of starting.
Yeah, that's so inspiring, because it's it's because it's like you do it, and then you do it for the pure joy of it, and then you can actually create something and actually, monetize it later on. And even if it doesn't monetize it, you still have a brand and a platform to share your story. And so it's so wonderful that podcasting is like, now they have Clubhouse as well. So
Yeah, and I think if people are planning on starting a podcast, I think they need to plan on not being able to make a lot of money with it. Very, very few podcasts actually make significant money, and that's just simply the reality. So, but here's the thing that's really great about this: podcasting is still very much in its early days. Okay, so
uh,
there are 500 million blogs out there. I think is the current number. It's around about 500 million, 520 million.
uh,
There is something like a million minutes of video being uploaded to YouTube every hour, and there are just barely 1.5 million podcasts. But of those, there are only 200 that are actively producing episodes all the time and have been producing episodes within the previous 3 months. So, I mean, you're talking 500 million blogs, a couple 100,000 active podcasts, and that's spread across the world, all the different languages, all the different niches. Uh, so, no kidding. It is possible to have a podcast that is listened to by a lot of people, and it honestly, this is a great time to get into it. So, if people are interested in doing this, just start watching some podcasting tutorials on YouTube, or take an online course from any of, golly, 150 different people that have created podcasting courses, and just learn a little something about it, and then just get started. And maybe your first 10 episodes are terrible, and that's okay. So don't worry about it. Just get started. Do something.
that- yeah, I love that. The other thing is, the one question we get from a lot of viewers is, which platform should they upload it to? Is it Apple or Spotify? And what are your thoughts on that?
I think you need to be on all of them. Apple Podcasts is probably the most important, mainly because it has the lion's share of the market. So I think something like 2/3 to 3/4 of my listeners listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts. Spotify is making a big jump. Stitcher just got bought. I forget who it was. I don't remember if it was Spotify or if it was somebody else, but Stitcher just got bought out. And so some of these companies are starting to consolidate. But I think you need to be on all of them, because there'll be, if you just say, well, I'm only going to be on Apple Podcasts. Like I said, only 2/3 or 3/4 of mine are on Apple Podcasts. So you risk cutting your audience by a quarter to a third if you're not on Spotify and all the others. And so the good thing is that most of the hosting platforms these days really make it easy to do that. So, for example, I use Buzzsprout as my platform, and they made it super easy. I mean, you just go to this one section of the website and say Apple Podcasts, and it's like, okay, in order to upload your feed to Apple Podcasts, do the following 4 things. Great, done. Okay, then Spotify. Okay, in order to do the Spotify upload, do these 3 things. Okay, great, done. And so within about 3 weeks, I had all the podcast platforms activated.
Yeah, so yeah, I think that'll really help the viewers, and to if they're interested in starting a podcast and how to do that. So what else? I know you do coaching, and then you have any things like digital courses, or any programs that you actively promote and participate in.
Yeah, so I do a few different things. So the coaching is where I've previously focused the majority of my time, but with now moving from the military to the private practice model, the demands on my time at work are substantially higher than they were, which I didn't think was possible, because I was a solo practitioner in GI for 5 years, which, by the way, I don't recommend. Uh, it's a lot of work, and being on call every single day, not my favorite. But I just see a lot more patients now than I used to, and so the coaching thing isn't going to be able to scale very well with the
No.
minimal amount of time that I have available. So I'm actually starting to work on a series of online courses, kind of a digital academy, I guess, if you will, for physicians on
Nice.
that we're going to start rolling out in the next probably 6 months or so. So I've got some really great stuff. So I've got a comprehensive personal finance curriculum that's going to come out. We've got a great thing we're going to launch that I'm super passionate about. That's going to be basically how to residency proof your marriage. So so how to have a thriving marriage despite being in medicine, which is inherently very, very difficult,
Yes, very
as
challenging.
anyone out there who's married knows. And so that's coming soon. We've got a course on leadership that'll probably launch next year. Just some really great stuff coming out. So trying a few different avenues and just see what is most valuable for people out there.
That's so awesome. Well, Brent, we really enjoyed having you on the show, and for the viewers, all the links and show notes will be in the show notes at the end, as well as Dr. Lacey's programs. Uh, Brent, any last minute words of advice, any tips or words of wisdom before we say farewell?
I think the main thing I would say to people is don't get caught up thinking that you have to have exactly the right thing, exactly the right idea, exactly the perfect approach to things. If you wait until you've got the perfect approach to things, if you wait until you have the perfect idea, you waited too late. Okay. It's much more important to get started than it is to get started perfectly. It's very, very easy to just continue working and and working and perfecting and trying to make things everything just the right way to do things, and then you never actually end up actually getting started. So whatever you're thinking about doing, just start exploring. You think you want to write a blog? Write 20 articles. If you can't write 20 articles in 2 months and without tearing your hair out, then you're not meant to do a blog. Okay. If you're thinking about starting a podcast, just go spend 5 hours looking at YouTube tutorials on how to start a podcast. You can figure it out very, very quickly. And just go record yourself doing 3 episodes and record 5 interviews with other people, and maybe 15-minute episodes. Make them short, make them easy. And if you get through that and you're like, man, this is a lot more work than I thought, I don't think I want to do this after all. Hey, we just saved yourself a lot of time and money, didn't we? But if you're like, oh my gosh, this is so much fun, I can't wait to do more. Awesome. Then you found your thing. If you're thinking about coaching, find someone to coach. Go to your local Lions Club, go to your local Rotary Club, go to your church, go to your residency program and just start asking, hey, listen, I'm thinking about getting into life coaching, thinking about getting into health and wellness coaching. I'd love to work with some people for free. And people are like, great, I would love to have some free coaching. Right. So yeah. So just whatever you're doing, just get started. And so I actually put something together for your audience, if you like, that I hope will be helpful. One of the things that I think is most valuable for folks is spending some time reading and growing. So if you want your business to grow 20% this year, if you want your side hustle to grow 20% this year, then you need to grow 20% this year. And the most important thing that I think you can do is listen to great podcasts like Chris's, or read some great books like Chris's, or from other people. But find someone who's done what you want to do and that has done it well, and learn from that. And so I put together actually a reading list for folks that I want to give to your audience for free that I think will be helpful for them. It's 35 books that I've curated that are for business, for personal finance, for leadership, and it's called the Scope of Practice Reading List. People can download that for free if they want. It's thescopeofpractice.com/reading list. It's real easy, and so it's free. And if you pick one book out of each of the 7 categories on there and read those over the next 6 months, it's like having an MBA. All right. And so, in whatever your topics you're interested in. So it's Scope of Practice, thescopeofpractice.com/reading list.
That's awesome. And we'll include those in the show notes. And lastly is, how can people get in touch with you? Email address, website?
Yeah, the best way is through the website. So my contact is on there, but it's www.thescopeofpractice.com, and you can access the blog and all the content archives and the podcast through that. And feel free to contact me and anytime if you want some one-on-one coaching, you just want to learn more. If you want a recommendation, read Chris's book. Then just get in touch with me. I'm happy to help any way I can.
Brent, that was an awesome interview. And for all the viewers, Dr. Brent Lacey has a really awesome podcast. So check out the Scope of Practice and, subscribe, download his episodes. He's got a lot of great shows. So thank you very much. And we'll see you in the next episodes.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks.